We'll just give it one more second. We hope you're having a fantastic evening, and hopefully it's a close to an amazing day. And if not, we hope that these next few minutes we'll spend together will make it better. All right, we'll go on and get started. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're gonna spend some time talking about polycystic ovary syndrome and what it means to each of us, my guests and me, what it means to our families, what it might mean for our beauty regimens, and also just how we can get involved to continue to fight for better access to resources and services, and maybe a cure one day. That'd be great. But I am Delegate T'Air Carroll. I represent the 95th House District in the Virginia House of Delegates. My story with PCOS is just one of many. And so I'm really glad that you've joined us tonight to share your voice, to hear our voices, and for us to build community around our lived and shared experiences. So tonight, I have with me Amariah Sledge, who is a warrior, champion, future doctor, and the inspiration behind the resolution to designate September as PCOS Awareness Month in Virginia. And soon we will have joining with us T'Air Carroll. And she's a makeup artist, an artist, a mom, and just an all-around beautiful spirit. And we also have with us Emily Marge in the trenches, serving as co-chair of the Health Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee and part of the Patient Advisory Board for PCOS Challenge, which we will hear more about this evening. And of course, we also have my Chief of Staff, the amazing Tempest Boone, who just had a birthday yesterday. So be sure to give her some love. But she'll be checking in the chat for your questions. But we will periodically stop, and if you want to come on camera and ask your questions live, that's fine as well. I'm going to drop a link into the chat real quick. Out of the blue, I got a call from a reporter about this event this evening, and they did a little bit of a story about what PCOS is and kind of why I got involved. But what I will say is I got involved specifically as a legislator, seriously, because of Amariah and what we've been able to accomplish and bring awareness around PCOS. So we're gonna bring Amariah up, but first we wanna know who we have with us in the room. And if you can put your name, where you're from, and if you're okay with sharing, if you can say if you have PCOS, if you think you have PCOS, if you have family that has PCOS, but kind of what brings you here this evening. And that way we'll know, do we need to start with the definition of PCOS, or can we jump right in? So if you all will go on and share that in the chat. But Amariah, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Share your story, how you got involved, how we met, and I think it really will be inspirational to others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Delegate Price. Hello, everyone. Thank you again, Delegate Price, for inviting me to tonight's event. My name is Amariah Sledge, and currently I'm a second-year medical student in Blacksburg, Virginia. Originally from Hampton, but staying in Blacksburg for the next few years. And it's hard for me to believe that 2017 was 5 years ago. The time just flew by so fast. And that those 5 years ago, my mom and I began reaching out to Delegate Price to just figure out ways to bring awareness to PCOS. And so when we first decided to reach out, I will say I had never reached out to a legislator before, had never really spoken to someone who represents me in a legal body, but I found that it was very, very easy. She's so approachable and has just been so supportive through this whole entire process, and I'm truly, truly thankful for that. And then when I did reach out and said, hey, this is something that I'm interested in trying to bring awareness to, she was like, oh, I'm a PCOS warrior too. So also having that in common, I think, was really helpful and reassuring, because I knew that now we were taking this to a level where we could hopefully bring some impact and help other individuals who were going through the same thing. So Shout out to Delegate Price. Thank you so, so much. But a little bit more about me. I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was 14. I had noticed the normal or abnormal symptoms of having the irregular menstrual cycles, the hair growth, around the time when I was 13. And so my healthcare provider, who's a good provider, pretty much just chalked it up to, oh, you're a late bloomer. Oh, your hormones will eventually, you know, work themselves out. Everything will turn out fine. Just give it time. But I've always just been an inquisitive and curious person. And I wanted answers. So I did a little bit of research on my own. I wasn't looking for a diagnosis. I didn't want anything to be wrong with me. I just wanted some sort of explanation or answer to what it was that I was going through. And so when I did begin to find literature on PCOS, I was like, okay, like this symptom matches, this symptom also matches. Maybe this is something that I can bring to my healthcare provider. And I'm very thankful that they were very open and receptive to hearing what I had to say, because I know that that's not a reality for everyone. And so they ran all the tests that they needed to run, and I was diagnosed with PCOS. But getting the diagnosis seemed like just half the battle. It's been years, and even still now, where I find myself trying to figure out what works best for my body in terms of reversing some of the symptoms and just trying to figure out ways to manage a lot of the symptoms just on a day-to-day. And so it's taken a lot of faith and a lot of support and a really trustworthy and multidisciplinary healthcare team that I've been able to reverse some of my symptoms to a certain degree. So I'm very, very thankful for that. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I find myself so passionate about healthcare. I've always had an interest in going into the healthcare field and becoming a doctor. But I think in hearing or experiencing PCOS for me and just hearing so many of other people's stories, that's why someday I hope to be that physician that can help their patient get to those answers that they are looking for, especially when it does come to PCOS, because I do have a passion for reproductive health care and metabolic health care too, because I do want to help individuals like myself. So once again, I'm thankful that Delegate Price took a chance on me. I was a freshman in college. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to explore this interest of mine, and that she was able to work with me on bringing awareness to PCOS, which again is something that I'm very passionate about. And I'm very excited to be able to discuss that throughout the evening's event. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And I will say, again, I was diagnosed at 16. I think the first time that I talked about it with strangers was 2017 when you just really inspired me. Like I hadn't even thought about, doing awareness. And one of the things I talked about, earlier with some folks was they asked me, well, like, what took you so long to speak up about it if you had it for so long? And I was like, kind of walking through some of what I encountered as far as like maybe shame or confusion or just like not wanting to have to explain everything, because not all of the parts of PCOS are glamorous, right? I don't know if any of the parts of PCOS are glamorous, but talking to strangers about excessive facial hair as a woman, or some of these beauty standards and I think some of the expectations of women to have babies and to, be smaller and all of these things might be obstacles for some of us to talk about it. But I think, with your generation, but specifically your boldness and courage in speaking about it, I mean, I'm here because you made a difference and really went hard, trying to make sure that we were doing that. So I hope you'll stick around so that we can talk a little bit more about what this may have meant for you as you were growing up. But I want to tap in Emily Because as we talk about awareness and September being PCOS Awareness Month, one of the premier organizations that is raising awareness about PCOS and getting policy changes done on the national and state levels is PCOS Challenge. And so Emily, you are working with them. Can you tell us more about who they are, your story, how you got involved, and then how we can get involved?
Yeah, of course. So good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Marge. I live in Alexandria, Virginia, and I am the Health Policy Co-Chair / Legislative Affairs Patient Advisory Board member too for PCOS Challenge. I actually got involved on a whim. I was at one of their 5K walks in DC, and I was like, hey, I'm getting my master's legislative affairs and I really want to like work on PCOS. Like that's my policy focus. They're like, okay, here you go. Let's get started. Because when I grew up, I was diagnosed when I was 21 a few years ago, and it definitely changed my life. It changed the course of everything. And thank you, Maria, for leading the change in Virginia, because that is so awesome. I wish someone did that for me, and knowing that you did that, you should be incredibly proud of yourself. It's not easy emailing a legislator. You know, I still get uneasy. I emailed my mayor to get PCOS proclaimed in Alexandria, and I was like, still uneasy about it. But, you know, that courage and advocacy efforts really do make a difference. So in a nutshell, PCOS Challenge is one of the leading organizations advocating and shaping public policy for PCOS patients, stakeholders, and doctors and physicians to make sure that access to care is centered, and developing a person-centered plan for us as patients matters. Putting the patients first, understanding what we're going through. And through our advocacy days every year since 2017, that was a focus, to make sure that PCOS is in people's vocabulary, like Delegate Price said. We really need to have these conversations just to talk about it. I was so afraid to talk about my PCOS diagnosis, even though one of my friends in high school had it. I was like, I don't know, like I'm a little uncomfortable about it, especially with talking with other people. They're like, ew, periods, you know, that type of situation. But when you're having these conversations, you get so enlightened. And that's one of the best parts about Advocacy Day. Through PCOS Challenge, patients get to tell their story from all around the country, including folks internationally, get to speak with members of Congress, senators, even state legislators as well, to show that their voices matter. Because PCOS sometimes can be a little hard to speak up with doctors like myself when I went through saying, no, you don't have it, or you need to take all this medication for the rest of your life. I'm not taking that for an answer. We need to find a cure. And that's one of the leading things our advocacy efforts are trying to do. You know, way back when, PCOS has been around for a very long time. Many people don't know there wasn't really any advocacy efforts. It's been around since 1935, the PCOS definition. And from 1935 to 2016, there's only 5 PCOS resolutions or bills mentioning it in Congress. 5. Since PCOS Challenge started getting more involved in advocacy, from 2017 to 2021, there was 23 bills and resolutions mentioning PCOS. So times are changing, and with advocates and people just speaking up and sharing those stories, whether writing an email, writing a letter, posting something on Twitter, that matters, because you never know who it's going to affect. 5 of my friends have PCOS. And they always say, if you didn't tell us you had it, I would have felt alone. So it's always so great to talk about it. I'm going to drop the link into the chat box for PCOS Challenge Advocacy Day coming up in March in 2023. It is virtual, so anyone can join. So feel free to, and that's it.
Thank you so much, Emily. And we will have a follow-up email that will have links and information in it as well. And so, you know, being part of a national organization that is doing federal, advocacy for something, it really legitimizes the voices of those of us that are going through it. And so we thank you for your work. We hope you'll stick around as well in case there are any questions and to further the conversation. And, both of you all have talked about self-advocacy and making sure that we know when something's wrong, but making sure that we're speaking up about it. But sometimes we may not even know the causes of what's going on. And, T'Air, I want to bring you into the conversation because you found out some information as a makeup artist. You're a makeup artist, an artist, a mom, and just a beautiful spirit. But tell us some more information about what you found out in your industry.
All right. So thank you so much, Marcia, for having me. This is my first time doing this. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me, everybody. But my name is T'Air Carroll, and I'm a professional makeup artist based in Hampton. And I'm just so happy to be a part of this and meet you all. From about 12 years old, I struggled with having excess facial hair that made me feel, extremely self-conscious. I soon began to shave out of fear of being teased in middle school. And the hyperpigmentation or dark marks that followed only made me feel worse. This was an everyday struggle, not only because of the shame that I felt, but also because I didn't know why it was happening to me. So I began wearing foundation to cover up above my chin to be able to face the day. And it wasn't soon after that I began to dabble in eyeshadow, doing my eyebrows and wearing lip gloss to school, so that's where all of this kind of started. And I've just been about it ever since. So eventually I was diagnosed with PCOS at 17 years old. And eventually I began my beauty journey when I was 23. I honestly never thought I would work in the beauty industry. Honestly, just because for such a long time, I had never felt conventionally beautiful. So when I started my first cosmetics job at Sephora, I soon realized that there was a place for me and many other women like me. So it was really a sense of community, not only the ladies that I work with, but the young ladies that I would meet day to day through the store. It was just wonderful. And although we all have flaws, it's totally up to us if we want the world to see them, right? So I discovered some of the best color correctors to neutralize dark spots and acne scarring, and foundations and concealers to make them all completely go away. So something that so many of us with PCOS endure on a daily is those dark marks, from, maybe we were shaving or whatever, the acne scarring. So, yeah. So, sorry. Increased hormones, though. What I learned was increased hormones caused by PCOS can cause skin discoloration as a result of that acne scarring. And also, shaving, waxing, and threading and unwanted hair. So this discoloration, also known as hyperpigmentation, can negatively impact our self-esteem and our quality of life. A dermatologist can help improve the appearance of our skin over time, of course, but makeup with great coverage, that can help to boost your confidence as well. And so when I started to work for myself, I began to take a closer look at the products that I kept in my kit. And I was really curious to know more about what was in them. All the products in my kit, luckily, are good. But what I did realize as I researched is that there are a lot of cosmetics on the market that contain endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs. And you may know them as forever chemicals. They talk about it on the news a lot with our cookware, the things that are in our food and our water bottles. But those things also exist in our cosmetics, believe it or not. So exposure to EDCs are linked to an increase in estrogen and testosterone, glucose metabolism, and weight gain, all common symptoms of PCOS. Unfortunately, exposure may also affect our fertility. So as we manage to work on our PCOS, we must also be on the lookout for these chemicals and limit them as much as possible. A great place to start is with your makeup bag. So, when you're shopping for your cosmetics, you want to always choose products that are phthalate and paraben free. And I will type that into the chat because those are so complicated words right there. But some great PCOS friendly beauty brands to look out for include Fenty Beauty, Danessa Myricks Beauty, NARS with an N, Bare Minerals, and Tarte, to name a few. Now, MAC Cosmetics is free of parabens, but is not fully phthalate free. And so every brand is not free of both, what I have come to learn. So it's very important to do your research about the brands that you currently have in your makeup bag, and also, you know, the ones that you're interested in buying, because it is much easier to find out if a brand is phthalate and paraben free than it is to find which brands actually contain them. Because, you know, they don't want to put all that information out there like that. Yeah. So, yeah, that's basically my research. And, you know, of course, I'm here for any questions.
Awesome. And I just, you know, God will definitely put the right people in place. And I have just been so blessed to meet all three of you on my journey. But like literally, T'Air, you made a pamphlet for last year's September's health event. And I'm just like, oh, okay, flipping through. And then I go to my makeup bag and I'm like, oh man. And so I'm wondering, you know, like why things with the, what is it, tretinoin, that, you know, things weren't getting better. So here I am spending money on these prescriptions in order to make this situation better. But what I'm using on my face every day was actually counteractive to what I was trying to accomplish. So I think it, you know, for those of us that choose to wear makeup, you know, for whatever reason, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a healthy way. So we appreciate you.
Thank you.
But yes, absolutely, Ms. Sledge. We will have a list and T'Air's research and more information in our follow-up email, which will go out tomorrow. But we did hear that Fenty, NARS, Bare Minerals, and Tarte, that was 4 that I picked up, were friendly.
Yes, and also Danessa Myricks, which a lot of people don't know about her, but her products have just landed into Sephora not too long ago. I don't think there are any in store where we are, but if you go online, you are definitely able to order something. And if you ever book an appointment with me by chance, that's all I use in my kit for foundation. I'll be able to match you here and give you your color.
And let me just say, for the record, every time that T'Air has done my makeup for a picture, I get nothing but compliments on it, or for an event. So I can vouch for her skills. But I do want to go back to something that thank you, T'Air. I do want to go back to something that Emily and Amariah, you had brought up, and then we'll kind of open it up for some questions. But just this idea that our medical professionals weren't listening, or may not have been prepared to have some of the conversations that we really needed. Can you tell us some more about, you know, some of the things you heard, or some of the things that you wish had been different? And then of course, Amariah, like, how are you going to be different as a doctor than some of the things that you encountered?
I guess I'll go. I think for me, it was the doctors not listening to me and be like, hey, I got hair on my face. Maybe that's, oh no, it's fine. It's genetics, whatever. Or this cystic acne, you're just a teenager. Like you'll grow out of it. And then I went into the emergency room for a UTI, and the person was scanning and they're like, you have some cysts on your ovaries. You should go see an OB. And I was like, okay, it's time, 21, should go, why not? And my doctor's like, you have PCOS, here's a pamphlet, bye-bye. She didn't tell me anything about all the health comorbidities that come with PCOS. You know, she just gave me birth control, metformin, and was like, there you go, have fun in college, bye. And that is so common for so many girls and women and those with ovaries who have PCOS, because they just don't know. And that's one of the big things is education and making sure our doctors are educated. They have a pamphlet, you know, maybe they just don't give the pamphlet and send them away, but like me, but have that better understanding, because so many of my health issues as I'm getting older are all related to PCOS, you know, like type 2 diabetes, like predisposed, hypertension at 24, like why do I need to be on 2 blood pressure medications, and spiralactone, and weight loss, trying to get the weight loss down, and medicine, you know, there's just, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, you know, like all these things are related to PCOS. PCOS affects you from your head to your toe. And that's something I really hope for the future and future doctors out there, and through policy and legislation, local, state, and federal, that our providers and the world is aware of these symptoms, so that it's not a young family trying to start something and then they're like, oh my gosh, or maybe we can do something that way. The early intervention is one of my big things that we're trying to work on, because that's so important. You know, getting that diagnosed very young, it can definitely help you in the long run, because you have PCOS forever, and hopefully one day we'll find a cure for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think for me, I kind of a similar situation. I took the information to my doctor, my healthcare provider, after I was sort of kind of dismissed as, oh, it's just the woes of growing up. You're just going through puberty, like everything will sort out on its own. You'll be fine. And so I felt, I mean, even at a young age, just how dismissive that was. And so I was really glad to be able to come back with other information and say, well, actually, I really do think that it is this thing, PCOS. And so like they ran the tests and did the ultrasound and found the cysts on my ovaries. And then I got the pamphlet, a very brief conversation about what it means, I guess, but it didn't capture like everything that it means. My healthcare provider told me, a 14-year-old, like, yes, this negatively impacts your fertility, and yeah, it explains the hair growth and some of the other hormonal problems that you're dealing with. Here is, you know, metformin, here's some birth control, go forth and sort of kind of try to fix this on your own, it almost felt like. And so the birth control, it just didn't work. It exacerbated my weight gain. And I was a freshman in college at the time. And so they talk about, you know, freshman 15. And despite my best efforts of trying to, you know, eat the right things and taking an exercise class like 3 days a week willingly, because I love to exercise, but still having to deal with the weight gain, not just from PCOS, but also because I was taking the birth control pill, and that was just supposed to be like a Band-Aid for my symptoms, and it wasn't really trying to get to the root of the problem. And so I think that honestly, with all of the medications that I've tried for PCOS, that has been just the most frustrating part. Is it's just Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid. And I'm kind of tired of Band-Aids. And so just like really taking the time to like do the research and think about, you know, making the things that I can try to change from like the inside, and kind of how we talked about, you know, makeup too. I'm like sitting here thinking through the things that are in my makeup bag and was like, oh my, I have a trip to Sephora to make to try to switch out some of my products. And so just thinking about all of the ways that it has impacted my life. And so, yes, PCOS, but now I also deal with hidradenitis suppurativa too, which has links to PCOS. And that has just like changed and rocked my world. Not necessarily for the better, like the past year or so. So just thinking about all the different ways and that this can affect your body, and kind of just like starting that conversation here and hopefully taking that into a healthcare setting. That's my goal. I see the value, having gone through this myself, of having a healthcare provider that will take the time not just to listen to you, but also one of the things that we talk about in school when they are telling us, you know, okay, here's how you would practice, you know, having the conversation, things like patient education with your patient. the teach back method. You know, you're, as the provider, giving them this information, and you're asking them, you know, okay, do you mind repeating that back to me so that I know that you understand? And if there's some sort of gap or disconnect, then we just keep on talking about it until I make sure that you understand. Because it's one thing to be able to, yes, have a healthcare provider that can help you try to get through this, but also being able to just empower my future patients so that they feel confident enough to try to not just work through this by themselves, but to bring whatever concerns that they have to me or to whoever else might be on their healthcare team. And, you know, not just giving them a pamphlet, not just giving the generic Band-Aids that work for everyone, but it's not working for them. So that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to in terms of when I begin practicing on my own. And interestingly enough, a few short years, time does fly, but yeah, just really trying to empower my future patients and make sure that they feel that they are best equipped to be able to deal with these things, but also that they're comfortable with bringing their concerns to their healthcare provider.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I have a similar one. You know, my mom and I were at the doctor when I was 16, and luckily she had even heard of it to know, like, yeah, this is probably, you know, what it is. But even in her care and concern, which I do definitely know she cared about me and was concerned for me, it was kind of like, here's some birth control. When you want to have kids, come back and we'll talk about it. Nobody prepared either one, my mom or me, for, I mean, and so now we're going to get a little, you know, informational. So, but like, I was having so much pain with my menstrual cycles that I'm doubled over in geometry class. So like, just even trying to concentrate on regular things while you have chronic pain is hard. It's so hard. And so when I started to realize I don't necessarily want children, I still feel like I'm a whole person. So all of these other things other than infertility, I would love for someone to help me with. And so I wish that there were more comprehensive strategies where the endocrinologist and the PCP and the, you know, rheumatologist and whoever ologists we need are speaking to each other. And something about that not being a cookie cutter thing, right? So if you have insulin resistance, check this out. So society basically tells us that eat less, work out more, like basically kill yourself on the treadmill in order to get smaller, and then the world will be a better place, right? Come to find out, doing a whole bunch of cardio for some of us with PCOS is actually counterproductive to weight loss. So even though we're doing what we've been told to do, we actually should have been doing, you know, strength training or some of these other things. And so I didn't learn that until I was in my 40s. And so, you know, hopefully these educational moments will be able to help people earlier in their PCOS journey so that they don't have, you know, some of the pitfalls that we have. Also finding out that COVID was affecting us in different ways. And I think I'll look up the number, but when they looked at women and people with PCOS that got COVID, there were more cardiac incidents amongst them. And so catching COVID with having PCOS, even though it's not listed, diabetes and obesity are, but PCOS specifically is not listed, it was like for some reason connected to more cardiac incidents with COVID. So, you know, those of us that are still wearing our masks, please don't joke on us. We're just trying to live. But yeah, so I wanted to check into and see, Emily, if there was, last question before we open it up, what kind of lobbying efforts have happened? Because I know what I was doing in Virginia, but around this idea that basically insurance coverage is for those that are trying to have babies, right? So there might be IVF or, you know, some of these things, or even our contraception, which the government better not touch because some of us can't live without it. But the contraception, so all of that, but all of these other things that we've mentioned, how they're seen as like cosmetic or optional, and insurance may not cover it. Are you all doing any work on the federal level about that?
Yeah, we're definitely interested in expanding our policy arena into insurance cover, because that is so important for all of us with PCOS. You know, we have to be referred to cardiologists, endocrinologists, everything under the sun, because again, PCOS head to toes, including your dental care as well, which is insane, I think, but it's all that reproductive system. But that's something we're really trying to focus on and shift. And it's so important when we have these advocacy days to hear what patients are going through, to help us, those on us volunteers, I mean, doing this agenda by patients for patients, to see what they're going through and what they really need. So I'll definitely take that back about insurance, because I know that's one of my things I want to do.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I remember, you know, and especially in Virginia, making sure that contraceptives like oral, like birth control, like that's important for some PCOS patients. Some of them need that extra hormones to just deal with the pain sometimes. And that is so important.
Yeah, thank you. And just so folks know, we did carry a bill in 2021 that would address some of that, especially like dietitian and nutrition services were not covered by some insurance companies until after you have diabetes. But you can kind of prevent that. And we would love to prevent that. So getting those, you know, those moments covered sooner in that, the way Virginia works, any bills that would mandate certain things be covered by insurance have to go to the Health Insurance Review Commission. And it's kind of stuck and gummed up in the works. But one of the points about why I would love for you all to get involved with PCOS Challenge, but specifically if you want to help me, standing in front of a panel full of mostly older men describing, you know, what some of the symptoms of PCOS, it's intimidating. They glaze over once you say menstrual cycle or, you know, testosterone and estrogen. But the more voices that we have that show up for it, the more emails they'll get. They can't help but tune in because their constituents are speaking up. And so it's really, really important that that we speak up. And so now I'll just kind of turn it over. I'm gonna unpin us so we can get to the gallery view and just see if anybody has any questions, comments, testimony, or anything that they want to just add their voice to this conversation. You are welcome at this time. If you are uncomfortable, you can send a message directly to Tempest or me, or you can drop it in the chat for everyone. That is up to you. But we'd love to hear more voices. And even if you don't have PCOS, but you love someone with PCOS or have witnessed something, if you have something to add, you are welcome at this time as well.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, Delegate Price, for hosting this talk. I think that I know that it's very important for us to increase our awareness of PCOS. And I am proud of my daughter, proud of all the warriors. One of the things that I've seen for so many years is her frustration, yet she remained hopeful as she pushed forward in trying to find answers. I'm going to put her on the spot. I did want to ask her to share, because we did finally get to a doctor that was a strong advocate that listened to her at, what is it, Sterlitz, the Sterlitz Center for Diabetes over EVMS. And she's still there. Her doctor has since left, but now she's with, I think, the chief of endo there. Long story short, this doctor listened when she came in and said, hey, I found out that this medicine works. And it wasn't that specific medicine. At the time, it was Trulicity. I think you found like some medical publication that said that women with PCOS are having this great success. That doctor didn't dismiss her, but she gave her another alternative. And I think it would be useful for you all to hear, because it did help her until she stopped it. It did help her get her the weight under control. So weight management, not necessarily weight loss, but a healthy weight management process, and also helped with the insulin resistance. And so I just wanted to ask if she could share that with you all, because I think that is as much information that we can get out as possible is necessary. So.
Yes, I don't mind sharing at all. Oh gosh. So I had, tried the birth control, had been on metformin, and it just wasn't working in terms of symptom reversal, it just wasn't working. Metformin made me really just like sick to my stomach too. I think I'm just very sensitive to medications. And so finally I was able to get a referral from my gynecologist to go to the Strelitz Diabetes and Metabolic Center that's at EVMS in Norfolk. And so the physician that I saw there, I had done my research. I love research. Just reading through like scientific articles, maybe I'm weird, I don't know. It's just so much fun to me. So it was really nice to be able to like actually find a piece of research where they did clinical trials and saw that this was something that worked in individuals with PCOS. And my mom was right. The medication that they tried in the study was Trulicity. And so I asked my doctor about it because I was like, the worst thing that they can say is no, I guess. So I asked, and she was like, okay, let me go, just look at this real quick to make sure that you're not going to have, any adverse reactions, that there's nothing in there that you could potentially be allergic to, or it's going to have any reactions with any other medications that you're taking, and we will circle back. And at the time I was a little disheartened because I was like, okay, maybe her saying we're going to circle back means that this is just a no, and she's just telling that to make me feel good at the time. But no, she came back with some research too. And she was like, oh yeah, like I found this study that you found, plus another and another and another. And it seems like this is something that could work for you. So and I love that she kept in mind also things like my insurance, whether or not my insurance was going to cover it. She said, I am going to be honest with you. I don't think that your insurance is going to cover Trulicity. Just because I get some of the drugs or the medications mixed up, but the primary indication for the use of Trulicity, I don't think I would have qualified. So it would have been really difficult for the insurance company to cover it, since it would have been for an off-label use. But she said, there is this other medication that's very similar to Trulicity, basically the same thing, just a little bit different. And I think that it's something that could work for you. And that medication was Saxenda. It's a GLP-1 antagonist. So it's marketed to help with weight loss, because that was one of my primary concerns when I went to her initially. I said, I've been seeing all of this literature that says, oh yeah, you can try to reverse your PCOS symptoms with a reduction of 15% body weight, but one of the symptoms is weight gain and weight retention. So I was just like, I don't know how that is supposed to work. And I'm so thankful that she listened to me and was like, okay, well, here is one particular symptom that we can try to address together, and we will see how the rest of your symptoms and your body respond to that. And we set up follow-up appointments every 3 months. Every 3 months, luckily it worked out with my school schedule at the time, and I was able to come home, go see her, get whatever blood work done that I needed to get done. And she, was tracking my weight loss. And not only was I losing weight, because I was still eating the same way, trying to put good things in my body that weren't going to, have any sort of adverse effect or exacerbate my symptoms, still doing what I thought was an appropriate workout, lots of strength training, not too much cardio, not really a big fan of cardio anyway. But, and so she was tracking all of these things. And before I knew it, my cycles were starting to become more regular. I had the reduction in hair growth, some of my acne just gone. And so I'm really thankful that I did finally find a healthcare group, because it's not just her, this particular physician, because she did have to leave the practice and she's now working somewhere else. But now I am seeing the chair of the department, and I've been off of the medication for a while. And even he said, I know that you said that you don't like the metformin. Unfortunately, for your insurance, and so he's already thinking ahead to me being able to restart this medication. He said, for your insurance to approve you going back on this medication, we have to at least say that you tried it. So while I'm bummed a little bit about that, I am still thankful that he's keeping this end goal in mind of, okay, we will try this out, because maybe things have changed a little bit and you're able to tolerate the metformin a little bit better, which I was hesitant at first, but I have started it back, and I don't have as much of a problem with it, like physically, in terms of it making me sick. But I do have a follow-up with him, I believe in about a month. And he already said at my last appointment, we're going to get your blood work done, and we're going to go ahead and try to get this medication approved once again, because I saw that, or at least in your chart previously, that this is something that had worked for you, where it seemingly checked, maybe not all of your boxes, but it checked a lot of them. And so I just really appreciate the folks over at EVMS for being physicians that do listen. And so it's just been really reassuring and really helpful having like that level of support from that healthcare group.
No, that's awesome. And just because she probably has a little bit more couth than I do, when she said stomach issues from metformin, let me tell you, debilitating diarrhea. Okay. And to make that be the medicine that everybody has to try before we go to another one is just one example of the system really like. So I'm also on Saxenda, and I feel like my symptoms are probably better than they ever have been, and just though we're not medical professionals, so go talk to your medical professional, but these are just, our stories or whatever. But I have heard so many women not know about the other alternatives and just try to power through on metformin. And if you have a job where you need to leave the restroom, it's just not happening. And so just, making this kind of real for folks to understand just like what we had to go through. So again, please let us know if you have a question. But if you don't, I just want to throw one out too, about the impact on mental health. What kind of mental, if you are willing to share, what kind of mental health impacts have you had? Because obviously what we've described is not easy. So have you noticed any impact there? Anyone can answer.
Yeah, I guess I go. Definitely depression is one of the things that it is a symptom of having PCOS that many people don't talk openly about often. I think mine rooted definitely early on from being in college and having excess facial hair and speaking with boys and like worried, am I not woman enough for someone to love me? For all this facial hair, the rapid weight gain, like almost every single patient experiences at some point in their life, and having that issue. But I'm very lucky with my insurance that I can get mental health coverage. And my primary care down here in Alexandria, MedStar, she's really potent on making sure my PCOS symptoms and my mental health are really important. So if you have PCOS or know a loved one, check on them, because it's a really hard thing. And especially with the big thing, you can't have children like looming over you for the whole rest of your life. That type of talk, it's very hard sometimes. And I've had struggles with it. My friends are struggling with it right now, trying to have kids and being sad and with PCOS. So, it's important to talk about. It's hard, but one day at a time.
Yeah, and just thank you for sharing that too, because like I found even just saying the phrase like my therapist said, when I'm talking to my friends, right, they're like, oh, you go to therapy? Yes. Have you seen the world? We should all be in therapy, and we should talk about it. And a lot of my loved ones in my circle are more open about, you know, what they're going through, because I've created a safe space for them to be able to talk openly about it without judgment. And so what would it be like if we created more safe spaces where people can talk about what they're going through without judgment, and maybe get inspired to seek help that they otherwise, you know, may not have sought. So I think that's another example of why it's so important that we talk about our lived experiences. So I've heard that we should stay in touch with our legislators for our lived experiences, because they might be able to do something about it. That advocacy is really important, because our voices need to be heard so that people that don't have PCOS, who are decision makers, are informed about what it is that we need and the changes that we need. That PCOS Challenge is an organization that we can sign up with. Advocacy Day is coming up. That there are companies that have healthier beauty products for us, and that we'll definitely send out that list and some of T'Air's important work and how you can get in touch with T'Air should you need her services. And that really, in many of the respects of life, speaking up is how you get change. And so I hope that someone has been inspired by these amazing women and their stories, and that you will take your story out into the world. And at least in Richmond, we'd love to have you share your story in Richmond. And I just want to offer one last chance. We have about 6 minutes left if you'd like. If there's anyone that would like to add, I will say welcome to the Clerk of Court of Newport News, Angela Reason. Thank you so much for coming to the conversation this evening.
Thank you for hosting this.
Yeah. Any final thoughts or comments from either our panelists or from the group?
Is it possible for your experts here, T'Air and Emily, to share their contact information in ways that we can get in touch with them?
Absolutely. Do y'all want to drop it in the chat? Okay, so
Yes,
while they're putting that in, we also want Tempest to drop our contact information, because I'm serious, y'all. I would love for you to send an email to contact your legislator. If I'm not your legislator, I still would like to meet with you if I am your legislator, but definitely reaching out to folks is how we're going to continue to create change. But also just shout out to the family support that we have here. I see all of us up here have some family members in here that are showing their support, so we do want to acknowledge that. Any other comments?
I would actually like to thank my family so much for being here, and not just being here physically on the call, but just like being on this journey with me. Oh, hi, Dad. But like being on this journey with me, because it hasn't been easy, and I know I haven't made it easy for them sometimes, just with going through the motions. And I really appreciate, you know, them just being there for me in all of the ways that they have been there for me. So thank you guys so much.
And it was an awesome program. I truly enjoyed it. I wish I had known about PCOS in my earlier years, but I have learned a lot tonight.
And thank you for joining us. And I am getting some messages directly to me. I'm just definitely thankful that you all found something informative and inspiring from this evening, so that you can take your own stories out into the world. So we do have the contact information for T'Air. Amariah, do you want to drop yours too, just in case somebody wants to reach out? You never know. Somebody might want to bless that Cash App for medical students. But just to say thank you all for joining this evening. We'll send out that follow-up email tomorrow. But really and truly, I want to thank Emily, Amariah, and T'Air for really being on the front lines of this and doing the work of advocacy. So we will have this recording in case there's anything that you need to hear again. We'll have the follow-up email tomorrow, and stay tuned. We're gonna have further conversations on housing and for business owners, for veterans, all kinds of conversations coming up. So make sure that you follow us on our social media, but also www.delegatemarciaprice.com. Thank you all so much for joining this evening. Take care.
Thank you, Delegate Price.
Bye.